So inflammation is a big word we hear today on TV, on infomercials, on everything, and on your drug commercials. A lot of people don't really understand what inflammation is. They're told by their doctor, you have inflammation, it's causing irritation of this joint or this organ or whatever part of your body, and here's this pill to take for that. Well, let's talk about inflammation and why it occurs. Well, inflammation is always in response to some kind of stress on the body, whether that stress is physical, chemical, or emotional. And inflammation is as I said, as a response, it's a response trying to heal whatever's going on. So if you smash your thumb with a hammer, it's going to hurt, right? And it's going to be inflamed. But that inflammatory response causes chemicals to be rushed to that area to help the body start to do the healing process, and you get swelling. And of course, whenever you have inflammation, you always have pain. Without inflammation, you can't have pain. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have. They'll go to the doctor or to the chiropractor and their blood test comes back and they have 3 of their arteries clogged in their heart. And they go, well, doc, I just played tennis yesterday. I feel fine. Well, because you will feel fine unless you have inflammation. You can have 3 clogged arteries. You can have cancer cells running in your body. You can have severe disc bulging in your neck. You can have a positive MRI for that. You can have your liver almost failing without pain. But once it gets to that point where you have an inflammatory response, you will have pain. And most people realize then they have a problem. Of course, the first thing they want to do is get out of pain. So they look for a medication or something to reduce that pain. After that, they go back to their regular lifestyle. So we want to understand, first of all, just because you don't have pain does not mean you don't have a problem. And just because you do have pain doesn't mean by getting rid of that pain, you've gotten rid of the underlying problem. So inflammation affects the body in many different ways. And what happens as we get older, you have so many injuries and traumas and problems that your body completely gets inflamed and you have chronic pain, you may have disability, and you start to become weaker as you get older. Now, that can be avoided to a certain degree by using things like natural anti-inflammatories or antioxidants as well. So let's talk about first drugs. Let's talk about what happens with anti-inflammatories that you buy over the counter or from your doctor. Things like Tylenol, Advil, Anacin, along with Aleve, and of course the much greater intensive prescription drugs, all the way to corticosteroids. These drugs affect the body by trying to reduce the inflammation within the body. The problem is these drugs all have serious side effects. Tylenol, for example, is one of the most toxic drugs to the liver. In fact, if you mix it with alcohol, you could die immediately. So it's a very scary drug to mess with. Advil is one of the most common, as well as Aleve, the most common causes of kidney failure. So, and these are just over-the-counter drugs, not even prescription drugs. So imagine how strong those are. And when we talk about corticosteroids, these are devastating on the body. Now, one of the reasons they're so good at reducing inflammation is because they take some of the enzymes that are made that causes the pain and inflammation and reduce them. Here's the crux though, when it does that, it also increases other enzymes that can increase heart disease, stroke, and other problems within the body. So prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, always have side effects. Not the best choice, of course. Now, one of the simplest choices we have for simple inflammations, like when you hurt your hand or your back or your legs, is ice. Most people discount ice, but ice is a natural anti-inflammatory, and it's great because it can be put right on the area and takes care of that injury itself. If you're taking an aspirin or an Advil or a Tylenol, doesn't that affect every part of your body? So even the parts that aren't inflamed are going to be get toxic because of that drug, whereas ice affects that localized area. So for general injuries, ice is one of the best things that you can do. And a lot of people say just ice for the first 24 hours. Well, think about this. If you have pain, you still have inflammation. So you should ice for as long as you have pain, usually 20 minutes a day or 20 minutes per time. and up to several times per day, but at least wait an hour in between every time you ice. And always wrap your ice pack in a paper towel so you don't get an ice burn, because those hurt even more than the pain itself usually. Now, when we talk about other kind of inflammation, because we touched on liver damage and really chronic disease processes where we have inflammatory response, some of the best things you can do is use nutrition, okay? And nutrition is excellent because you can actually reduce your inflammation through the things you eat, but you can also increase your inflammation with the things you eat via breads, cereals, pastas. Really, most starchy foods and high fat saturated foods are going to increase your inflammation rate in your body. So one of the best ways to keep your inflammation down and to live a longer, healthier life is to go through the approach of eating most of your foods as vegetables, some of your food as fruit, and a portion of your food as lean, healthy meats. I got to tell you, everything else causes inflammation. So if you stick to the nutrition program of large amounts of vegetables, medium amount of fruit, light amount of protein, and very minimal sources of the bread, cereals, pastas, and all those things that we all love that come in packages, cookies, and all that stuff, if we can reduce those, you really reduce the inflammatory response in the body. So there are also some great foods that naturally reduce inflammation. Well, fish, for example, any kind of omega-3, one of the greatest things to use to reduce inflammation in your body. Again, we can touch on that for hours and how that works, but having salmon in your diet on a regular basis, tuna in your diet on a regular basis, and if you don't like fish, in fact, even if you like fish, take omega-3s anyway. You want to make sure you get a lot of that in your nutrition. Coffee is also an anti-inflammatory, but coffee has a lot of other effects, so a better choice than coffee would be green tea. And there's some really good green teas out there, and if you start, and it gives you a little perk, a little energy, but it's not so over caffeinated that it blows you out of the water. So it's something you can do throughout your day. It gives you a good pick-me-up, and tastes good, and it is good for you. Obviously, berries, everyone knows about all the different berries. They know about acai berry. They go in the jungle, they get all these berries, and you pay all this money for it. Well, let me tell you something. Apples are great anti-inflammatories, and they're very cheap. They're easy to buy, and they last a long time. You don't have to pay $100 for a berry that was found in Africa in the jungle and dug up by explorers. You can literally do things just in your own supermarket, like blueberries, blackberries. All those things are great, full of antioxidants. But most fruits and vegetables do have some form of antioxidant ability, and they're going to be an anti-inflammatory as well. Most of the time, what we need to do in life is avoid foods, not take in all these extra special things. If you can stay away from, as I said, packaged foods, bread, cereals, pastas, all the cookies, all things that we feed our children, I mean, it's out of control in our society. All these inflammatory foods increase obesity as well, and we are having the highest level of obesity on the planet now, and our children are becoming diabetic at a young age. So if we can get people to control their nutrition, control their diets, teach their children the right things to do. Hey, I'm not saying that you can't go out every once in a while and have a Sunday on a weekend after going to the movies, but if every day there's dessert in your dinner plan, and every day your children are eating school lunches, and every day for breakfast they're having cereal and sugary cereal and milk and another glass of juice, that's a lot of sugar, and our bodies are becoming inflamed. So we got to really start buckling down, or else we're going to have, and one thing I want to mention, this is the first generation where our children are not going to outlive their parents. And most of that comes from inflammation in the body and poor foods. So if you want to make sure that your kids live a long, healthy life, it's time you start teaching them how to eat right, and start with anti-inflammatory foods.